final stretch and home run now. This one's from Rich Fenton, who is a senior systems engineer at Arctic Wolf, and he's going to be talking about cyber risk and moving from laggard to leader. So, Rich, thank you.
Thank you very much, Theo. Good afternoon, everybody. So I guess what stands between you and going home. So hopefully I'll make this worth that wait and worth the staying on. But thank you for choosing to come to speak with us today and spend some time with us. As Theo said, my name's Rich Fenton. I'm a pre-sales technical systems engineer for Arctic Wolf. Quick poll, who's heard of Arctic Wolf? Oh, cool, excellent. You may have seen us a lot because we landed in the UK and Europe about 18 months ago. And we have a very well-established business in North America, in the US and Canada, which means that when we land into Europe, it means we can do cool things like sponsor race cars, and you might have seen us on the Red Bull car. And on Match of the Day, we sponsor Wolves, who are a customer of ours, but also we have a sponsorship. That's one area that you may have seen us. And today, what I was going to do is introduce you into what Arctic Wolf do and how we help our customers really focus their security operations to be able to provide capability and continuous capability to not only help them day to day with their security operations, but how they continually increase to evolve their security posture. So why did we start the company 10 years ago? What problem did we want to address? We wanted to address the problem of what every single customer has, is understanding where there is risk and vulnerability in the organization and identifying where that risk is, so that first of all we can understand it, we can look across the entire attack surface, not just the endpoint or the network or the application servers, but also cloud and work from home devices, and be able to understand where there's risk and vulnerability associated to that. But then once we understand that vulnerability, then we can patch that, and even if I'm the best patcher in the world, even if I can address every single vulnerability, there's always going to be the thing that I'm not aware of, the 0 day that hasn't raised its head yet, which people are exploiting. Or there might be suspicious activity that a user might be conducting in. So being able to detect that suspicious activity and then take a course of action also is a critical element, because one's before the bang and one's after the bang being the event that causes you consternation with your security posture. And we identify this as being cyber risk, and being able to reduce that cyber risk to the absolute minimum, either by understanding where I can affect risk and where I can affect vulnerabilities, or being able to detect and respond 24/7, is really the capability that we provide our customers to be able to achieve. So when we launched last year in the UK and we landed, one of the first things we did is we surveyed mid-size enterprises to really find the temperature of what are the things that our customers and our potential customers are struggling with. And you may resonate with some of these numbers. 73% of their teams feel that they lack the capability or expertise to be able to fend off a modern ransomware attack or sophisticated cyber threats. 39% of IT teams find managing just the overwhelming noise within their environment, the alert fatigue that we see within their environment as being overwhelming. And then 55% have ignored security incidents, and 1 in 5 ignore security alerts altogether, which I think was really surprising, because this is I think it's a very honest submission. But the problem with this is that this isn't a tooling issue. There are great tools that are available, whether that's endpoint, whether that's firewalls, whether it's identity management, multi-factor authentication, cloud access security brokers. There are a plethora of tools and great vendors that provide capability. But when you look at any real breach or any real significant posture problem within a customer, it usually boils down to operational failure. I'll give you an example, and I'm not betraying anybody's confidence. This is freely available on the web if you want to download it and read it. It's a very interesting read. But last year, the NHS in Ireland, the Health Service of Ireland, had a really significant breach. And that happened around about the June timeframe. The initial entry in that attack was around March, April. They were breached in May, and they were pretty much significantly down until September, until they got their major services back. And that was Conti ransomware that they fell a victim to. And what they did in December is PricewaterhouseCoopers did an audit to be able to understand, Well, what did that attack look like? How did the threat actors get access to their environment? And what were the opportunities and the learnings that they could take from that exercise? Absolutely nothing to do with Arctic Wolf. It's freely available. You can download that PricewaterhouseCoopers. Just look for Conti ransomware attack Irish Health Service and you'll get access to that report. And actually, when you read that report, the health service had great tooling deployed. They had great endpoint, they had firewall, they had SIEMs deployed. And in this instance, the failure was operational failure. The ability to understand what their telemetry was telling them, and then having the expertise and the guidance to be able to create security operations on top of that capability to understand there are threat actors at play. That threat actors had moved in their environment and effectively started the breach, which they had a lot of ample opportunity. A lot of the recommendations was to be able to implement process and procedure and provide expertise to be able to stop that from happening again. It's a really interesting report. Even if you just read the executive summary, which will maybe take you 30 minutes, it's well worth doing. And what we see with most customers today is that they have a plethora of tools that are deployed, best-of-breed tools that are excellent at being able to defend their perimeter, to be able to provide defense in depth for laptops and servers and workstations and cloud and networks. But actually the ability for them to bridge that gap so they're not feeling overwhelmed and they have the capability to be able to understand where the next threat is and be able to provide that is process and procedure. And you think about all of these things, it maps to any framework. If you're Cyber Essentials Plus or you're a NIST framework, the thing is to be able to, first of all, understand your attack surface. What does my entire attack surface look like? Because once I understand it, then I can understand, well, what's suspicious behavior, what are vulnerabilities associated to that, and then be able to understand how I can patch them and then which order should I go and patch those and address those vulnerabilities or mitigate those vulnerabilities. I can't patch everything, but I might put special procedures around things that I can't patch that are known risk within my environment. And then knowing that I can't patch everything, I might be able to then provide capabilities to be able to detect and respond so that when I see suspicious behavior, I can be alerted to it and then in a timely fashion take an active response to mitigate the risk or mitigate the behavior completely. And this is what you'd typically call SOC, Security Operations Service, or Security Operations Center. This is something that you obviously have to do 24/7. Now, if I'm an investment bank or I'm BT or a service provider and I've got lots and lots of resources, I might have a small army associated to all of these activities. And of course, there's other activities like threat intelligence, what's happening in the wider landscape and how's that going to potentially impact me? What threats, tactics and procedures are we seeing the threat actors implement, and how do I defend against that wider ecosystem? But even just to provide this capability and to do this continuously, this isn't something that you do once a month or once a week. It's something that you should be doing continuously. You'd probably need a small army. And of course, most customers aren't an investment bank. They aren't a service provider with unlimited resources or appropriately unlimited resources. And even if I did have unlimited resources, I've got to attract this security talent and retain them as well. And this is really why Arctic Wolf was formed, was to provide our customers this capability and allow them to consume this as a service. In the same way that you can consume cloud or compute or storage from AWS or Azure or GCP, Google Cloud Platform, being able to consume this outcome by way of a subscription model, but still have that capability to provide all this discipline and security operations. So how do we do this? The first thing comes with our customers' telemetry. As I said before, customers have already selected their best-of-breed tooling. They'll already selected something for an endpoint and something for a firewall and identity management. Maybe they're using certain clouds or certain multi-factor authentication solutions. And all of this tooling that our customers use today generates a wealth of telemetry. So the first thing we do is we allow our customers to stream that telemetry to us in real time. And this isn't something our customers deploy. It's not something that they deploy within their data centers or platforms that they deploy. This is hosted in our Arctic Wolf cloud. And it allows us to, first of all, federate all of our customers' telemetry so we can get visibility of the wide attack surface. Anything that can create security telemetry, that's useful for identifying risk or being able to spot suspicious behavior, generally we want to ingest it. And I won't cut forward to like a commercial pitch or anything, but we don't charge for this service based on the amount of telemetry sources or the amount of logs that you send us. It's largely on the number of employees that we have in the organization. And the reason we do that is as soon as this becomes a commercial discussion, then you might not send that telemetry. And that might be the difference between spotting risk and vulnerabilities in your environment and not spotting those vulnerabilities or that suspicious behavior. So of course, once we've got that telemetry, obviously we can store it, we can federate it, but then we can start to correlate and analyze it to be able to see where the signal and the noise is for suspicious behavior. And that's something that we do within our platform to be able to take those telemetry sources and put them together. So for instance, I might have lots and lots of failed logins in Active Directory, followed by a successful multi-factor authentication from an unusual location, followed by a user going and putting a strange rule in their Office 365 email box. And each one of those telemetry sources are different, but if you put them together in a certain time sequence and a certain time frame, then that looks like deeply suspicious behavior. And that will create an alert within our platform. And the most important thing as part of this is not only will we not just alert that customer, but we have what's called a concierge delivery model. And to me and you, this is good old human security expertise. These are security experts, credentialed and certified, that are aligned to our customers that act as an extension to their team. And this allows us to be able to not only scale the telemetry and take that heavy lifting of analyzing that telemetry, but then providing not only an alert to say, hey, we've got a problem here, this is what we've detected, this is what the potential impact is, and most importantly, here's what you now need to do to go and remediate that. So that example I gave you before, you might want to find out if the user's in the office. If they are in the office, this is suspicious behavior. So take out their account, reset their credentials, and then be able to go and run a vulnerability scan on their endpoint because they may have downloaded some malware as part of that process or audit their activity. And this guidance, this capability, is provided from the concierge team that's aligned to our customers. So the way that we allow our customers to consume from us is based on a subscription model. They don't buy the platform, they send the telemetry to us, but they don't pay for that telemetry that's being sent to us. Effectively, what they do is they subscribe to outcomes. And these largely map to the outcomes that we saw before. So we have managed risk, which is really about continuously scanning the customer's network, endpoints, cloud environments to see and quantify digital risk. And this might be something that you already do. Here's 1,000 vulnerabilities that we've scanned within your environment. But the concierge delivery model here is to be able to work with you to understand, well, what are your key applications? Who are your key users? What are their associated devices? Because you're probably not going to patch 1,000 vulnerabilities overnight. You probably want to work on those first 100 that represent material risks to you. And what the concierge security team do, they meet with our customers and they'd be able to provide context and guidance and procedure that given 1,000 vulnerabilities, these are the ones that we're going to focus on first. Create a plan of action, go and patch those, and of course the next time we scan, we'll see those mitigate, move over, and we can start to demonstrate that we're reducing vulnerabilities over a period of time and effectively reduce risk from being attacked in the first instance. Managed detection and response is really what is called before 24/7 SOC. It's the ability to be able to see that suspicious behavior, the initial ransomware beaconing, the data exfiltration, the user going to the website, submitting their phishing credentials and posting their credentials. That's really what detection and response is looking at that signal in the noise to be able to say, this is the behavior I've seen, this is the impact of that behavior, and then being able to take some action against it. Some instances we might contain that device or remove it from the network if our customers have given us pre-authorization to be able to do that. In other instances, we might be escalating and communicating to our customers to be able to understand, well, what actions do they want to take, and then take actions from there. So the heavy lifting here is not only that 24/7, but also providing that guided remediation as part of that capability as well. And then finally, managed security awareness is what I'd term as the human firewall, is educating employees to be able to spot social engineering campaigns. So I'm a user of this service myself as an Arctic Wolf employee. When the Uber breach happened a couple of weeks ago, within a few days, we'd had a little video that had dropped into my inbox, 3-minute video, that explained what MFA bombing is. And the fact that if I receive an unsolicited MFA request on my phone, maybe I shouldn't accept it because it's a security risk. Prior to going on holiday, I got another little video that told me this is the dangers of taking a device that may contain corporate data on holiday with me, leaving it unlocked in the bedroom or joining a free hotel Wi-Fi. And the advantages of this is the heavy lifting of building an effective awareness campaign isn't the content, but it's the program management of delivering that content, backing up with phishing simulations, remediation training for people that fail phishing simulations, and building a culture of awareness as opposed to a culture of penalization if you fail a ransomware test. So again, the heavy lifting here is human. It's the ability to build an effective program, the scheduling, the reporting, the demonstration that that's being effective over time, and of course the tweaking of that over time as well, which is why we have this concierge delivery model that's at the heart of all this. And our customers consume these outcomes based on service subscriptions. If I've got security awareness training boxed off, I'm already doing that. I'm very happy with what I'm doing. But actually, I need 24/7 monitoring because my cyber insurers are telling me that I've got to be able to have 24/7 monitoring and a SIEM as part of my cyber insurance renewal. Then I can tick that box very, very quickly and subscribe to this service. Likewise, if I'm then worried about risk and I want to understand, I don't want to be breached in the first instance, I don't want that panic call in the middle of the night, then you might subscribe to the managed risk capability and then use that capability. And if you haven't picked up, we're completely vendor agnostic. So it doesn't matter what endpoint software you're using, what firewalls you're using, what identity management solutions you're using, we'll use whatever solutions are capable of sending us log entries to be able to ingest into our platform and get this visibility. We don't want to take our customers down a specific route or dictate the technology that's most appropriate for their environment. Oh, sorry, we have an incident response firm. This is in orange. This was a company that we acquired earlier last year called Tetra Defense. The reason it's in orange is because it's only available in the US and Canada at the moment. It's something that we're bringing over to EMEA and hopefully in this next quarter or two. Tetra Defense and incident response is for those customers that have been breached and they absolutely need somebody to help them be able to respond and recover from that breach. So generally it's not the customers that are already running managed detection and response and managed security awareness and managed risk. We work closely with the cyber insurers. So when that phone goes off in the middle of the night and the customers have been breached, these are, if you take Pulp Fiction, Winston Wolfe, these are the guys that turn up to be able to help those customers cover and recover their environments. And this is a really interesting flywheel for us, because not only does it allow us to be able to then take those people that have been breached and then apply detection response and risk to those customers, but it also provides a huge amount of threat intelligence. So as we work those cases and we understand those cases, we can build those compromises into our pipeline. And of course, this pipeline spans all of our customers. So this concept of inoculation, you see it at one customer in America or one customer in Germany, one customer in the UK. You build your detections and then you apply those detections to the pipeline so that everybody then gets the benefit of that threat intelligence. This is something that we saw massively with Log4j, understanding what those look like and then proactively reaching out. This customer's vulnerable, this customer's being breached or showing signs of breached, and then being able to proactively reach out to those customers is critical. We also saw this just last week or the week before with Fortinet. So the Fortinet vulnerability, we saw that in over 30% of our install base of active signs of that being attacked. So we can go and reach out to those customers and tell them, hey guys, Fortinet have got a new piece of code that's available. It's going to make you much more secure if you apply it immediately rather than sit on this, because we're seeing this actively being exploited and attempted to be exploited in our install base. So this platform not only gives us wide visibility of each customer, but it also gives us global visibility of what's happening and being able to create threat intelligence associated with that. So I'm not going to dwell on this too much, because obviously we ingest tons and tons of telemetry. To give you an idea, it's about 2.5 trillion events across 4,000 customers is currently what we're ingesting into our pipeline every day. It's about 330 billion events per day, providing that information to the pipeline. And this element up here, the observation events, is our platform to be able to ingest those events and then start to be able to spot those interesting things like the failed logins, the successful authentication, the user putting the the weird and wonderful mailbox rule that looks like a business email compromise. And the most important thing is that investigation capability is provided by human security expertise, that concierge delivery model. We never send an event to our customer that hasn't gone through that triage activity with a human security expertise in our concierge team. So the net effect here is to take all of that telemetry, the analysis of that telemetry, the heavy lifting, and really focus our customers on the actions that they need to be able to provide to be able to secure their environment and to be able to reduce risk within their environment. And this tends to be, for the average size customer, a couple of thousand employees, tends to be about 3 or 5 cases per week. These are the things that you need to do. This is a guided remediation that you need to follow. And then if you have any questions or you need guidance and you need expertise, again, the concierge security team are there to be an extension to your team to provide that capability. So I've mentioned the concierge security team a couple of times. If I lift the lid on that a little bit, then there's actually 2 halves to this team. We have what are called the triage team. These are the guys that work in our SOCs 24/7. We don't employ people to work 24/7. That'd be against anti-slavery rules. But they provide coverage across all of our customers. And they provide that guided remediation. They provide that investigation. Every customer that comes on board gets aligned to 2 people of our strategic concierge security team. And our concierge security team are there to provide detailed guidance and detailed expertise. Probably the best way to explain this is if I give you an example. And this is an Exchange exploit from a customer from last year. So last summer, not the one just gone, the one previously. And this customer came on board on August the 2nd. We can onboard customers extremely quickly. It's as quickly as we can deploy sensors to get telemetry sources and log sources from our customer's environment and to be able to get the process things like who to call, contact details, basic training of how you interact with the service and the platform. But typically that takes 30 days to get a customer live and active within the system. We can do it in 5 days. We had a customer recently that got breached. They were paranoid that they were going to get breached again. That's very common activities. In the UK recently, we deployed a customer within 5 days because they were really, really paranoid. So a motivated customer that can provide this information and get the sensors installed can do it much quicker, but 30 days is average. After 6 days, on Saturday evening, August the 7th, 7/27, we started to see PowerShell detections coming from an Exchange server, which were abnormal. Doesn't necessarily mean we've been breached, but that telemetry had made its way into the platform, and within 2 minutes, the triage team had been alerted and started their investigation and started their observations. So we can't say that this is definitely suspicious activity at this moment, but it's interesting activity that needs to be watched and needs to be observed. Over the course of the next 20 minutes, we started to see this escalate. And this escalated with an executable being dropped to that Exchange server, PowerShell running that executable. And then we started to see command and control beaconing from that Exchange server effectively to a known threat IP address associated with command and control in Finland. And then this escalated further by escalation, privilege escalation. And then we started to see attempted lateral movement from their endpoint software complaining, which was sent on a 1 in this instance. And over the course of this 30 minutes, our concierge triage team had decided that this looks like the early stages of a ransomware attack, the early stages of persistency. Is this server going to get ransomware and encrypted at any point in time? Probably not, because it doesn't work like that. You get persistency, you start to case the joint and reconnaissance, and then you launch your attack at the most opportune moment to cause the most effective damage. But this is the first stages of that persistency. And what we did is we escalated to the customer. In this instance, the customer wanted a call. They wanted to have a discussion before deciding to take the device offline. And then at that point of time, the customer agreed that this looks like deeply suspicious. Let's take that device offline. And that's what the triage did. And within 40 minutes, this attack had been contained and the immediate threat had been resolved. But it doesn't end there. We need to understand, well, how do we solve this? How do we understand what was the root cause of this threat? And actually, how do we get this server back into production? And this is where their aligned concierge team members came into play. They basically guided the customer how to clean up that server, what activity needed to happen to be able to clean that server so it can go back into production. And then also, we gave the customer, how did the threat actor get into the first instance? So we run a vulnerability scan on that Exchange server. that showed that that Exchange server was missing a series of patches, their patching software was broken, and therefore it had been exposed for the last 6 months to the number of 0 days. We then went away, created a script to identify those backdoors, and then created a script to be able to go and remove those backdoors. This is that detailed guidance that the triage team don't provide, but the aligned concierge security engineer provides. And then we provided guidance to say, if you don't want this to happen to other services, think about multi-factor authentication for your VPN. Think about Office 365. This is fundamentally a vulnerability on the Exchange server, a 0 day. And then think about your GPO permissioning for PowerShell, because again, if you'd hardened that, then you wouldn't have experienced that first sign of breach at 727 as well. These are all posture improvements that they can make strategically to harden their environment and make those improvements. If this had been a cloud environment, if it had been Office 365 or if it had been Azure or AWS, a similar process would follow, but this is specifically for ransomware on Exchange server. And this shows how the platform works, ingesting that telemetry, how the triage team are providing that immediate 24/7 response capability, and then how the concierge security team then come in to be able to provide that guided remediation. And this is obviously managed detection and response. Seeing that suspicious behavior, highlighting it, and then providing guided remediation to be able to recover from that. If this customer was a managed risk customer, the fact that that Exchange server had a number of vulnerabilities associated to it, we would have highlighted that when it scanned and we saw that those vulnerabilities exist. You'd then go and patch those so that you didn't get breached in the first instance because the vulnerabilities would have been picked up and hopefully been patched. So key takeaways, 2 minutes to detect. We could have blocked at the first sign, but generally you want to block at the most appropriate point of time based on preconditioning, on pre-approval, but most customers will have a conversation, especially if it's a centralized service like Exchange. If it's your laptop, you might say, well, actually, if you think it's compromised, then block immediately. But if it's a core service, maybe we have a conversation. So we also provide what's called a security journey. And this isn't a platinum experience, it's not a paid-for experience. Every single customer goes on what we call a security journey. And security journey, I know, sounds hideously marketing term, but it really is. So once a customer comes on board and we've deployed a customer and they go live, which, as I said, on average, that's 30 days, the first thing our concierge security team do is meet with that customer. And through the first 90 days, meeting with them regularly, we go through a period of assessment. So we customize the service on how they want to be escalated, when should we escalate, when shouldn't we escalate, all of those customization things. But then we also go through an architecture review, looking at what log sources are they sending us. Have we got visibility within our environment? Is there areas that we need to get more visibility from? How are they managing their firewalls? How are they managing Active Directory? And the whole purpose of this is to baseline a customer and to be able to assess them, to assess the areas that they're strong and the areas that they're proficient, and more importantly, look at the areas where we can potentially look to be able to improve upon, the areas that the customer needs guidance and expertise. And then once we've done that baselining and that assessment, we then go through a period of continuous review. And this is what we call the security journey. And this is a process of taking each of those areas of improvement and then focusing to be able to look at, well, how can we improve? What is best practice? What's guidance? And then provide areas that we can effectively then go and lift those areas up and incrementally improve environments. So this might be how they manage their firewalls. It might be how they do PowerShell detections. The customer might be having a pen test coming up. So again, what we typically find if you're doing a pen test, working with your security operations provider so that you're hand in hand. So as they try the doors and they rattle the windows, we're detecting, responding, and if we're not seeing those things, then, well, why aren't we seeing those things? And working out where there's invisibility. The key thing here is it's a partnership. Somebody at the customer owns the security posture, owns the security strategy, but we're providing that expertise and guidance as an extension of their team. And all this sounds great. Sounds like, oh, this is interesting. How much does this cost? Is it a tiered service? We do this for every single customer. And ultimately, what we're there to do is be able to then provide guidance and expertise, but then to be able to report so that you can demonstrate over time that you're effectively materially affecting the security posture in your environment. And that might be so you can sleep at night, but more importantly, it might be that you need to report that to your board or your external auditors or your cyber insurers, because those are typically the reasons why people are looking at services like this capability. So that's pretty much all I had. I wanted to open up for questions, but I'll effectively leave you on this, is think about how you can optimize your existing tech stack and get telemetry and centralize the telemetry so you get global visibility of everything that you deploy, regardless of wherever it is, not just focusing on the endpoint or even focusing on the network activity. Just being able to get as much telemetry as you possibly can and storing that and being able to analyze it. That's all part of the service. But then think about, well, how do I analyze that? How do I make sense of that data? How do I make learnings from that data and then create posture learnings from that data? This is about security operations. It's not tooling. It's about process. It's about procedure. It's about expertise and guidance. And then how do I then take learnings so that I can apply that and continually build resilience in our environment? If that's something that you need help with, if it's something that you need to jumpstart extremely quickly as well, then Arctic Wolf is probably a good conversation to have a deeper conversation with. We have the stand today. I appreciate it's the end of the day. But if you'd like to email me or contact me, those are my contact details there. I'll be more than happy to respond and point into the right direction as well. So with that, I will thank you for your time and your attention. I'll open it up for questions. I think we've got a good 10 minutes, bang on time. Questions, observations, is it ramblings of a madman?
Just a creative one, right at the very start, you spoke about the entire attack surface. So obviously we are all moving into more freedom with our technology. So there's an Arctic Wolf agent, there's a sensor, there's potentially Sentinel-1 all feeding into this machine.
Mm-hmm.
But what if it's my wife's laptop I'm working on today, because that's the one that's powered up this morning because the other power supply gone missing. How are you trying to, or how is it possible to try and maintain that view across the entire system when you never really know where someone's going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you very much. Did everybody hear that at the back? It's about the attack surface and getting good coverage of the attack surface. And the answer for this really comes from having access to multiple telemetry sources. And the devil in the detail is getting as much log sources that are useful. So what we do is, first of all, we use some of our own telemetry. So in the instance that you gave about your wife's laptop or your laptop, we put an agent on devices where we can put an agent. That's Windows, OS X, Linux, or a corporate controlled device. And that's not there to replace the endpoint software. We're not going to say, do away with Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike or Defender, whichever EDR platform you choose to use, because we'll ingest that telemetry too, but we'll also augment it with the agent telemetry to give us visibility of servers, whether they're on-premise or in the cloud, and also workstations as well. And that gives us things like PowerShell detection. Great example there, that agent comes from a PowerShell detection. The endpoint software wouldn't probably put that up. Some might, some may not, some may do. And that gives us telemetry of what's happening on that particular endpoint or that particular server. The sensor not only collects and aggregates data, allows it to stream to our platform for on-premises capability, but it also looks at network flows. So command and control beaconing, that instance, we pick that up through the sensor. That's another sensory point for us as well. Your wife clicking on a phishing website and submitting her credentials, we'd see that through the sensor if she's on the corporate network or if she's got the agent installed. All the other telemetry sources, the web access gateway, the multi-factor authentication, the identity management, all of those other sources are also ingesting into the platform as well. Same with cloud services, so Office 365 or what you're running in Azure or Google platform or AWS, we ingest that telemetry as well. And again, what's the critical thing here is to not only get as wide a visibility as you can. If it produces a log file, we generally want to see it, but we also want the ability for you to send that. Because as soon as we start charging based on ingestion, then you will penny pinch it. I'm not going to send you that because it's going to blow my security costs up. So therefore, I'm not going to send it. And that's where you get visibility issues. So as I said before, we provide unlimited ingestion. We want to see as much telemetry as we possibly can because that's the difference between spotting that suspicious behavior and not spotting that suspicious behavior. Just to be very clear, the example I chose before was Sentinel-1. That was that particular customer that was using. But they could have been using CrowdStrike, they could have been using Defender, they could have been using Sophos, McAfee, Kaspersky. I wouldn't recommend they use Kaspersky, but hey, it's same with firewalls. You could be using Palo Alto firewalls, you could be using Fortinet, you could be using Cisco. The process here is to be as vendor agnostic as you possibly can. And they're all telemetry sources that aid us to be able to look at detections. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So But
Yeah.
you kind of come in the background and say, well, but those connections will be connecting those sensors. So I've used something to
Yes,
connect to the
at some
system
point
to
in
see
time,
something connected.
at
So
some
what
point in
does
time,
that
you're
do?
touching something. So, if, for instance, you logged into Office 365, then the telemetry sources from Office 365. Of course, if you were Googling what was happening on Facebook or whatever, I think there's been a Facebook conference today, somebody mentioned before, we're not really interested in that. It's this stuff that we're interested in, and obviously is in with the corporate domain, is generally we'll put on log sources for. And that's part of that customization and that onboarding, is to be able to see, well, what makes sense, what telemetry sources can we suggest. And of course, because you've got a human in the loop, not every source we can make sense of, right? We're not a globally unlimited parser, because that'd be magical if you could create that, right? But as long as we're ingesting that telemetry, then a human security engineer who's got these sensors and log sources that the platform understands can use those secondary sources. Even if we don't parse it, they can use that telemetry that's included in that sources to be able to confirm or deny, which aids to be able to reduce that noise. Because again, part of this is being able to take all of that noise and all that alert fatigue and then suggest this is something that you need to be focused on, or actually it's noise, in which case we don't bother you in the first instance. So that noise to signal ratio is really, really high, and getting high fidelity alerts is extremely critical. Because what we don't want to be is just another nagging thing at you. Because as soon as we start nagging at you, you're just going to mute us, and that's where you start to get problems. Back to the NHS scenario. Irish NHS, not the English, British NHS. Realise I'm in Scotland, sorry. Any other questions? Thank you for that question, thank you.
One more.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You had mentioned looking at alerting for vulnerabilities such as Log4j, and I'm assuming that's from sort of published products out there that advertise if there's an if they use Log4j. From the other side of things, I'm a software developer for the NHS actually.
Yeah.
Say if this vulnerability gets published, and I've got several code bases out there that that can use this library, am I able to point that telemetry to your system, and you're able to tell me these products that you're developing have this vulnerability?
So we don't quite go to that level of detail, but I'll give you a couple of examples of what we do, which is relevant to what you're asking. So one of the things we do, regardless of what customer consumes from us, whether they're a managed security awareness customer, detection and response, or managed risk customer, one of the things we do is continually scan our customers' endpoints. So anything that's publicly facing, we'll scan for. And the whole purpose of that is to continually scan for vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities are things like you've got a web server that's prone to SQL injection, or credential compromises, or Log4j is one of the things that we added into the scanners for those. When we call them mega events. Again, sounds hideously American, sounds hideously German, that's what we call them internally. A mega event is something like Log4j, or what happened with Fortinet recently. And that's not a slight on Fortinet, everybody has bugs, right? And when we see those mega events, what we do is our threat analysis teams start to build either indications of compromise, or in the Log4j instance, we built scanners, publicly available scanners. So even if you're not an Arctic Wolf customer, you can download that scanner, scan your public internal IP address, your public IP addresses and your internal IP addresses, to see if there's anything that's being advertised that could be exposed to Log4j. So we do this via what we call security bulletins. So every customer that comes on the service, when we see these mega events, we send out a security bulletin. And that might be something that's associated to a known vulnerability. There was one yesterday about Microsoft, and there was one about Citrix yesterday that we sent out to every customer. It might be something like Log4j, which typically would envelop over a couple of weeks and will change as the threat intelligence evolves over a couple of weeks. It might even be something that we're seeing through Tetra Defense. A really good example I can give you of that is, Indeed, the employment people. They've been targeted, again, not their fault, but they've been targeted by threat actors submitting resumes with malicious documents as a way of effectively a supply chain attack. So knowing that activity is happening, and then being able to go and focus on your HR team to be able to say, look, this is an area of attack that we're seeing. These are recommendations that you guys can do as just basic hygiene when it comes to cybersecurity. These are ways that you can, again, reduce your security. So it's all about providing timely information, conveying to customers what the potential impact is, and then providing guided remediation of these are steps that you can do to help protect yourself. And again, these are things that every customer really should be doing, we just haven't got the luxury of having 10 people in the threat intelligence team or 100 people in the SOC to do this 24/7. And that's why we developed the service to allow our customers to consume that capability on a demand basis. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Cheers. Oh, some wolf eyes.
Anything else? Well, Rich, thanks very much
Thank
indeed.
you.